says Russell Martin's ego doesn't back up his managerial talent and tactics. But we've also had some comments in as well. Mark says you could say the exact same thing about Celtic. And I wanted to talk about Celtic as well, about their game against Hibs at the weekend. And finally, Scott says, Young Moore needs to go back to Spurs. Not the right environment for him. Too toxic. It's not his fault. And on that, I would just add as well, Keith, why would you play? Why are they developing Mikey Moore ahead of Finlay Curtis, who was brilliant, I thought, at the start of the season?
You're asking the wrong person. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, of course. You've got a young kid that plays wide, that scores goals whenever he gets a chance, that looks as if he might be a really exciting homegrown prospect straight out your academy.
Yep.
And you play a young boy for Spurs in front of him. Now, that's not anything against Mikey Moore. I think when he arrived, I think Rangers fans would be probably quite excited about that, because he has been described as a generational talent by the people round about Spurs, and he made the breakthrough into the first team under Ange Postecoglou. So yeah, I can understand why you might want to take a look at him, but I said previously, Daniel, and I think it's actually bad for the boy's development that he's been pitched in with so much anger around just now. That's not the place for a young boy that doesn't really understand. I mean, you can make more of a case for what's his name, the young Finlay Curtis.
Aye.
You make more of a case because at least he's familiar with the environment. At least he's familiar with, and he understands. I mean, Mikey Moore's just come in and must be thinking, what hell is this? And I felt it was quite unkind to have him, to throw him out there into the firing line. And I thought you could see that he was clearly struggling with it. And I mentioned last week, Dan, it could well be that there's something stipulated in the contract, the loan agreement, that if he's fit, he has to get game time. But I think that's a conversation you would have manager to manager, that, you should be on to Spurs and saying, look, this is actually going to be quite unhelpful. I think we might be damaging here, and it might be better just to take him, out. Even if that was stipulated in the contract, I think that Thomas Frank would probably be in complete agreement. That he's there to improve, not to go into his shell. So it was no surprise that he didn't start at Livingston. Antman did on that right-hand side for Rangers. Looked okay, but not probably what Rangers would be expecting from him or hoping for him after the way that he introduced himself to the crowd at Rangers in his debut. Looked as if he was going to be a cracker. But everybody looks as if their confidence is fragile, don't they? They look like a real weak, fragile lot just now, this Rangers team.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned Celtic, and we've got some comments coming in on them as well. Obviously, 0-0 draw with Hibs at the weekend. I think that's the fourth 0-0 draw of the season already for Celtic. Mark in the comments says, watching sports scene, the number of clubs playing more attractive football than Celtic is shocking. And he also adds, no one at Celtic currently scores the screamers Hearts have. Sean says, as a Celtic fan, I really hope Rangers keep Martin out until January, because at the minute we aren't firing and they actually have some decent players. Now, after 11 games last season, Keith, Celtic had scored 36 goals, and at this point they're down to 17. So a drop off of 19 goals, which I guess is going to happen when you sell players like Kuhn and don't get...
You sell your most creative, attacking and goal-scoring players. Yeah, that will happen. Look, I don't know what was I going to say. I don't think Celtic are pushing on the big red panic button just yet. And they've got an excellent manager who, more often than not, will find a way to keep them winning. But there's no doubt that, Brendan Rodgers, in many regards, is operating with one hand tied behind his back right now, because of the activities in the transfer market, which have given him a weaker squad, a weaker hand. He's playing with a weaker deck, isn't he? And that is, we talk about Rangers being confusing. This is staggering that Celtic have allowed this to happen.
The thing is, it's a weird one. Watching Celtic at the weekend, I thought that the lack of creativity was crazy, but look, the defence is still as solid as ever. And I know you've been a fan of Liam Scales in the past, so have I. But I know you've talked about him a few times. I think he's been brilliant this season, absolutely brilliant. Wins everything that comes into the box.
Dan, he's one of these guys. What have we said before about Brendan Rodgers? He's got magic dust, and he walks about the train set, and season after season, it'll be one player that you see coming on and really developing. And Scales has been that player consistently now under Brendan Rodgers over the last 2 and a bit seasons. He has come on leaps and bounds, and he's really. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago we're sitting here during the transfer window, and I'm saying that probably Brendan Rodgers would look to upgrade his left-sided centre half and get somebody that it can be as reliable as Cameron Carter-Vickers. Well, right now, if anything, Scales is actually edging it over Cameron Carter-Vickers.
I was going to say that, aye.
Yeah, so I mean that there is a case in point. There's a player who was probably on the way out when Brendan Rodgers came back to the club, and he's been worked upon, he's developed, he's improved, and to a point of that he's almost unrecognisable from the player that was there when Brendan Rodgers came back to the club. And that all points to, terrific work in the training ground. And fair, credit Brendan Rodgers for it, but you've got to credit Liam Scales, because he's the one that's put in the work. He's worked hard to make his game better. And yeah, he's you're looking at Celtic now, and he's one of the first names in that team sheet, Liam Scales.
Yeah, no, definitely. Marzino points out in the comments, Scales would have been over the moon to go back to Aberdeen a couple of years ago. GM says, I remember Scales' debut against Rangers. The guy's good. That's coming from a Rangers fan. A couple of other comments here, Keith, that I'll get your take on, that not necessarily on Celtic. Daz says, Keith is 100% right. Russell Martin had nothing in his managerial experience to be considered for the job. The same goes for Barry Ferguson and Ancelotti Jr. Time for a manager with solid experience. And Mark also chimes in saying, why is Brendan Rodgers elite? Please spell it out for me. Never changes tactics or formations, even when it's obvious which players have improved under him. Well, I would put forward Liam Scales as one right away.
One of them, yeah. Look, Mark's not a Brendan Rodgers fan. We get that. But I think, if you look at what he's achieved over his 2 spells, the amount of trophies, last season's Champions League progression.
There's no doubt. I know, sorry to jump in, but there's no doubt Brendan Rodgers is a top manager.
Yeah,
no doubt.
And if you doubt that, go and speak to the guys that work well. Go and speak to Scott Brown. Ask him what he thinks about Brendan Rodgers and what it was like to work under him as a player. He's top level, but as I said, I don't think he's been dealt a great hand here, and also because there is this issue about his own future and whether or not it's time for him to move on. 3 years can be a bit of a shelf life. So where's his head at just now as well, Brendan Rodgers? I think he's probably feels a little bit bruised and a little bit let down by the club, for sure. The leaks been coming out against him. It's not a great environment just now, is it? It doesn't feel particularly happy. And while all this is going on, you've got fans protesting against the board.